I've got to use my voice. If you're ready, we're to start. And I just want to begin by saying thank you to Provo. This is a real honor to have everybody here, and we appreciate you making the drive. We want you to eat some of our most famous kolaches that if you're going to be a UL student, you stand in line for them, you love them. So please help yourself. We have sweet and savory. Also, let's go ahead and start with just roll call. Let's start and do the room first, and then Nick, I'll just let you do the online roll call if that's all right. All right, go ahead and start over here, Jessica.
Mayor Mark Johnson, Lehigh City.
Terry Malkovich, City of Woodland Hills.
Shepherd, Mayor Clearfield. Dan Vegan, City Council.
Justin Lee, League of Cities and Towns.
And I'm Mayor Michelle Cafusi.
Cameron Dill, Executive Director of the League.
Seth Perrin, Spanish Works City Manager.
Mary Lynch, Councilman. I love it that I only had to drive to Provo today.
Take you, Mary.
Katie Harley with the League.
Liam Strelka with the Utah League of Cities and Towns.
Nick Jarvis with the League.
And then Nick, if you wouldn't mind jumping on mine. Oh.
Yeah.
You, right here. You're used to sitting next to this guy.
I got like secret stuff to talk to you.
Okay, fine. Welcome, Mayor Walker. We're glad you're here. Thanks for making that. Did you bike it or drive it?
No, I drove.
Okay. Thanks for making the drive.
Well,
Let's go ahead and jump online and welcome those.
And then online, we have Scott Phillips, Amy Springer, Joey Jessup, Jessica Lestrini, Logan Thompson, Lindsay Peterson, Michelle Grant, and Nikki Brown.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us online.
I'm here too. Tammy.
Okay. We're glad you're here.
And Adrian.
And
Thanks.
Tammy. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and move on then to item number 2. Item number 2 is administrative items. I need this is an action item. It's an approval of the minutes. So need a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes from our last meeting? Any online? All right, seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Just a reminder that we have our ULCT conflict of interest forms. If anyone needs one or is seeing an item that they might need to recuse themselves from, even in the future, we've got them online and so your access anytime you might need it. Okay, let's move on to item number 3. Item number 3, the ULCT Board of Reports and Appointments, and we're going to turn this over to the he's our policy analyst and program manager.
I will turn it over to Ken.
Okay, I'm just following what I told to say.
Perfect. First of all, thank you, Mayor Cafusi, for hosting us here in Provo. This is the 3rd year now that we've done a board meeting in a presidential city. So we did it in Mill Creek and South Jordan previously, and now Provo. Last week, I was with a bunch of state league directors from around the country for several days for our annual meetings. One of the topics was around board participation, and there were quite a few leagues who said they can't get enough people to run for their boards and they only do board meetings in person to try to get people to their office. And I said, well, we're the exact opposite in both, in that we do a board meeting in St. George, we do a board meeting in the presidential city, and we have, for this next year's board of directors, we have 28 applicants for 9 spots. So it's the 4th straight year. We have more than 3 times the number of applicants than we have spots available, which I think speaks highly of the organization, and we appreciate those of you on the board right now who are considering running again, because demonstrates that it's worth your time to be here. So but thank you for that. Nick, is there anything, do you want to just give a quick update on the nominations committee, and then I'll go to the NLC piece?
Yes. We have putting together a nominations committee. Put together. Bylaws also require that it is ratified by the board of officers. We not did the whole committee, but wanted to bring in the board in the name of transparency. And we were going to ask the board to ratify current members that we have, and then you can see those in green are people we've reached out to but have not heard back from yet. Depending on how that answers the last slot, bring that to the board officers for final ratification. Ask the board to ratify. So.
Are we asking for a motion? Asking for a motion. Then so moved. Second it. We have a motion on the table and a second. That opens it up for discussion. Any discussion on the nominations committee for 2024? The online? Just give me a wink or a nod. That's what they usually do to me over there, so that I know to move on. All right, with that, we'll call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Perfect, thank you. The nominations committee consists of some current board members and some people who've never been on the board, a section of big city to small town, and so we try to reflect the full membership. This nominations committee has a tough job, but we sifting through 28 people for 9 spots. Yeah, Mayor Walker still has the scars from last year when he had 4 times the number of applicants than that's available.
We're fine.
Okay, speaking of National League of Cities, Mayor Shepherd is considering applying for his second vice president of the National League. Do you want to take 30 seconds and explain what that entails?
Yeah, it entails being the second vice president of the league. And from then moving up. So it's after meeting with Clarence Anthony this last couple of months ago, he'd asked that I toss my name in for that. So there you go.
Okay. I've previously served on the NLC board, and then Mayor Shepherd currently serves on the NLC board, and our league board has endorsed him when he was ran for the league board or the NLC board previously. So we'd like to have a motion to endorse candidacy for second vice, and then if you do that, then we can put together a letter, and I can follow up with Clarence, the NLC executive director, and coordinate with Mayor Shepherd for next steps. That election takes place during the Tampa event, which will move.
Second.
Second.
Move this along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Got your motions for endorsing Mayor Shepherd.
Just welcoming Kate into the meeting, and we have our motion and our second. Any further discussion on having some representation at the national level? Are you sure you really want to do this?
Yes.
Okay. You have to say yes.
Okay, for you.
Have to be more defensive than that when you get on that stage. Anyways, will be proud to have you there. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Mark, is there anything else we can do as board members here to support your nomination, other than a letter?
The letter's really probably going to be it. It's
Okay.
Just
yeah, it'll be an interview. So see how it goes.
Practice We've got some good people.
This is true. I may call on you.
All right. Did I already call it to the vote?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm still worried about him being at the national level, but you'll be fine. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then.
let's go back to Liam for the.
I do have a few.
Okay, Liam, now you take it.
Okay, I'll be fast. So we've got a few boards and commissions that we need to fill, that we have recommendations for, and then we have a couple of vacancies that I will also talk about. So the first one is the Utah Communications Authority. Seems like we talk about this every single board meeting, because pretty much we do talk about it every single board meeting. I gave some reminder on what it does. They're providing emergency or financial support for statewide 911 emergency services. and other intergovernmental relations for public safety. The position, in a past board meeting, the board recommended Alex Jensen of Layton to serve there. And due to some unforeseen circumstances, he's no longer able to serve and had to withdraw from consideration. And staff is now recommending that the board appoint Mayor Brown, the Chief Administrative Officer in Ogden City, to serve in that vacant role. For the Utah Indigent Defense Commission, this is another one we talk about a lot. It protects constitutionally guaranteed liberties through ongoing support for effective indigent defense services throughout the state. And the commission collaborates with all the levels of government, provide guidance and standards for local defense services, encourage and aid of indigent defense services, and offers grant money and more along those lines. It's composed of 15 voting members, of which the ULCT has 2 appointments. The other appointment that the board filled is Aaron McKnight, who's the deputy city attorney, and this current appointment would be for Paul Dodd, who's a civil litigator in West Jordan City, to fill the role that previously was held by Ryan Luce. For the Land Use and Eminent Domain Advisory Board, currently Clint Drake, who's the city attorney for Layton, is serving there. As his term came up, the OPRO, or Office of Property Rights Ombudsman staff, communicated to us that they thought Clint was doing a really good job of representing the league, and Clint's somebody that is very active with ULCT on a bunch of different issues. So we think it would be great to keep him there and have him continue to serve from Land Use and Eminent Domain Advisory Board. And then just for a couple of quick updates, the Utah Retirement Systems Membership Council meets monthly and has a bunch of representatives from different levels of government and public employees, firefighters, and more. They generally meet to talk about their organizations, different issues that they're dealing with, and advise on different potential policy changes as it comes to the retirement system. Jamie Davidson was previously serving here and has now left on his mission for his church. So we're looking for somebody to fill that position. And for an update on the Outdoor Recreation Regional Councils, the Outdoor Adventure Commission will be overseeing this in the Division of Outdoor Rec. They reach out to us to have 2 people from each of the 5 regions to serve on these regional councils to help their local applications for funding, to just really be more connected on a local level to each of their regions. These names are not required to have been approved from the board, but after we solicited through different emails, through our local administrative advisors, Friday fax newsletter, and more, these are the individuals that were interested in serving there. So we still have 1 vacancy in the eastern region that you can see there. So for proposed action, staff's recommending that the board appoint and accept the appointment of the following individuals: Mayor Brown to the Utah Communications Authority, Paul Dodd to the Utah Indigent Defense Commission, and Clint Drake to the Land Use and Eminent Domain Advisory Board.
Moved. Second.
And a second on the table. Are there any questions about?
Suggestion. It's for the Outdoor Adventure Regional Commissions.
Mhm.
Does the Eastern region include the Vernal
Mhm.
area? Because there's so much cool recreation stuff happening in the Vernal Roseville area, we can team up and see if we can think of someone in that.
Yeah,
That would make sense. It seems like they should.
I think that makes sense to cover that eastern region. I'll follow up with you.
Great. All right, let's go ahead and call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. All right, Utah Communications Authority Board, we got them all done. So let's move on now to the ratify membership of 2024 nominations committee.
We did that too.
Oh, we already,
We're good.
you're skipping my outline. Okay, so we're on to number 4, which is the budget and procurement report and check register. And Nick, are you the one that's going to take this one?
I am, indeed, Carson will tag team here, so I'm not doing both at the same time. Great, you have in front of you our year-end budget and procurement report. This is the close of fiscal year 2024. You'll notice throughout, I refer to percentages of budgets, that sort of thing. Those are the percentages of what we're describing as our core budget, which does not include the $1.58 million grant for the local administrative programs and DOD. And then the final line in the first paragraph is our overall revenue. So overall, we spent just over 100%, we received just over 100% of our anticipated revenue, 100.4, and we spent about 90% of what we anticipated in our budgets. Overall revenue over expenses for this year was $433,332. You can see we have just over 100% of our membership dues, which make up 63% of our budget. We budgeted and anticipated 99% of the municipalities participating in ULCT, and those municipalities did. We've also received just over 100%, almost 104% of our sponsor/donation revenue. We've also received 104% of our registration fees and exhibitor revenue. So our conference revenue is slightly higher than we anticipated. We've also, in a report later on in this meeting, we received revenue or recognized revenue from our grant special projects, including our land use plan and ARPA assistance. We also had much more in interest earning than we anticipated, more than double, and our was slightly under what we were like about half of what we were looking at there. Also, you'll see 85% of a grant was recognized this year, and I think I've explained this with our other grants before, but we receive all of the revenue, and we mark that as a liability on our books, and as we expand, that's when the revenue is recognized in our budget. The reason for only spending 87.5% first year of the grant took a little bit to get it up and running off the ground, and we also security walk off task that we needed to have the main personnel expenditure that we put on this program. We didn't have for over half a year, so that's the reason. Of our core budgeted revenue, we spent about 89% this year. Personnel was right on where we were thinking, in the high 90s, 97%. It's important to keep in mind that we start with unaudited numbers, exactly like what happened this year. So this is before capitalization of equipment that we purchased, for depreciation of all that has been factored in, and then also it's not including the number that we're going to get, which you'll see in our audit number, which throws everything out of whack. Because the number ends up when you are at the $1 billion mark. Sometimes that's an asset, sometimes it's a liability. One year when it was an asset, we thought we spent negative money on benefits, which is something that happens, but we're reading actually how we have to keep it on our books. So just know everything will look a little different when the audit comes to you, but this is our cash and what we're spending in a budget year. This is what you'll want to do. And then our event expenditure, a little over a quarter of our budget. We were at about 88% on those expenditures. And then I also described the grant project. I also bring you here for the first time after we adopted our procurement policy in May, a formal procurement. We got to our first formal procurement. This policy was adopted after the 215 was passed. We put out an RFP for annual convention and production services. We did respond to proposals for that. We put together an evaluation to assess all the material on that. After they awarded that, I factored in cost, and we had a winning proposal with Procurement LLC. The for also had the close cost. And we bring to today a 5-year contract. Our annual convention. This is the group that we have to put in. Criteria. Event costs continue to increase. So to have that pricing locked in for 5 years is beneficial for us. We'll also be able to roll that after we get to the contract and grant to approve here. We are last report to approve the financial report. Also approve the typo that just improve this 5-year contract for in the event planning services for annual event. Carson, if you don't mind just scrolling through these numbers for budget, you'll see your packet, and after that, you'll see our event register.
So is this event just for annual or does it also cover mid-year?
This contract is just. Yeah. Here, this hosted they have recently instituted a policy. For if I'm right around here, where you guys their in-house TV and event production services. Last year's year, we were without all of that, right? Work with any event for officials day, the costs and everything are lower for that. Not have a 5-year contract with that officials day. They're not going to be here for 5 years.
On this 5-year contract,
You'll see your back in 12, if you have any questions on those. Particulars, we can get you an answer. We do not have, we're not in our office, we don't have files of every check. What all those expenses.
on this 5-year contract, what is that percent increase each year? It goes 106, 109, 113, 116, 120.
Yeah, those are the numbers. I don't look at the exact. But they gave each one of those as a line item. They didn't say, oh, here's the first year with an increase of 4%. So it'll be each one of those numbers. I think so. It'll in line with us. I'll also mention that the costs that in the events, they were the lowest costs. They were the lowest cost.
Best and the lowest.
Yeah, the best and the lowest. Exactly what we're looking for up in our brand new formal procurement process.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
The sound was very difficult to understand that. Scott, if you can hear me right now, just let us know in the chat. That was me.
I can hear you, but it's very broken up.
Okay, I will, you can hand that a little closer. This should help. Is there anything folks online would like me to go over again? Does that help? Is that sounding a little better for me?
Much better.
Good to know. Get near the mics, everyone.
You want to repeat your whole spiel?
Cam won't let me. We have a lot to go over. But if there is anything in particular that folks online would like me to repeat, just let me know by either speaking up or sending something in the chat, and I am happy to.
So we need to make a couple of motions, each of them separate, am I correct?
They could be, I think you can approve the report and check register as part of one motion. We should probably do the contract as a separate motion.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the year-end financial report with the, is it the June 2024 check register?
Yeah.
Moved. All right, we got a motion and we got a second. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Let's move on to the next item to approve, which is the 5-year 2024 to 2028 annual convention event planning and production contract with the In the Event LLC. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Everyone is just on fire this morning.
Second that.
All right, a motion on the table in a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to item number 5 is ULCT engagement report, and Molly, our deputy director, will take this one. Excellent. And do you have a microphone by you? There we go. All right. Little. Today, but we did want to give you summary. Those programs culminated.
Hello, it's me again. Okay, the ARPA return and report, the quick background. Provided state direct funds to be used with steps by the Treasury. The board approved of the hiring of a legislative research analyst to oversee the ARPA program with individual cities and towns. The final rule from Treasury had broad categories, replacing lost sector revenue, COVID-19 with California economic response, providing people workers, and investment in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. By the final count, 155 citizen counts did voluntary assessment to fund a position for an ARPA specialist. They range from really large cities and towns of about 100,000 people to the small cities for people. And the allocations also range. Okay, that voluntary assessment.
Liam, we can't hear you on the audio.
Oh no, I have like 2 mics right.
We can't understand you. Sorry about that interruption.
Really hear you.
I think you can't understand it because he's talking about federal government.
I need to. You want to test or do you want me to test?
You hold at the front of the class.
It's a lot easier actually up here. That's okay.
So talking to this one.
You're all really. Can you hear me online if I talk through the mic?
Much better.
Okay. I'm so sorry. This is really weird, but I don't know which way to look.
You can come here and just do all these things. It's really
Okay.
fancy.
This was like worst case scenario that I was gonna have to stand up here in front of everybody. Okay. So yeah, as they were all very different sizes and had different allocations, the point of contacts really changed. Sometimes it was a city manager, sometimes it was a town clerk that worked on Thursdays from 1 to 3 p.m. So that made it really interesting, but also really fun to get to know a lot of those smaller communities. The assistants varied from simple deadline reminders to assisting people with their actual projects as they were working through the final rule, whether it was a housing project or water, sewer, anything else like that. A lot of the assistance from this last year was just helping them to do their report and make sure that it was submitted on time and to get all of those requirements. Over the years, we've hosted multiple town halls to help with the ARPA assistance. We've answered questions. I spend a lot of time on the phone around April 30th when reports are due with fun little communities and their clerks. By the end of it, as I was counting it up, I consulted on over 100 different projects that were being done throughout the state, which was really fun. And it is also just really interesting to know what's going on throughout the state, as that helped to plug into different things, like when we were doing advocacy up on the Hill or anything else like that. So I gave a list there of some different ideas of what it was consulted on. Cam and I also helped with the GOPB application when they had the $50 million for matching grants for the ARPA assistance a few years ago that had 445 applications requesting over $1 billion in assistance. So that was a big wake-up call of the need that's out there, especially when it came. Most of it was water infrastructure that was really needed. Let's see here. So as the program's kind of coming to an end here and the funds are going away that have funded my position in large part, we've been able to really get everybody on track for that paid that voluntary assessment to make sure that the reports are in and timely. It's the federal government, so there have been a lot of problems throughout the years that we've tried to work on, their website being down or not accepting different things. But we've gotten there. The final rule dictates that the funds must be obligated by the end of this year and expended by the end of 2026. So as we're going through those last couple of years, it really will just be focused on the reporting side of things and not as much on planning what projects will be or what they'll spend it on, but just making sure that they're getting their reports in. So the league will still continue to offer that assistance as they get those reports done. Yeah. Yeah. They still have to do the reports each. So like for Woodland Hills, you do the April 30th report each year. So it's still like to that April 30th, 2027, there'll still be that final report. But it will just say we haven't spent anything this last period. So it should be pretty easy. But it's been a really nice tie-in to our local administrative advisor program, as a lot of the cities and towns that paid that voluntary assessment overlap with the cities and towns that qualify for the local administrative advisor program that I'm now working on. So it's been great to tie that in.
I'm going to test this. If the funds are going away and your pay is up these funds, do you go away?
I guess that's not necessarily my decision on if I go away or not. I'd like to stay around as long as you'll have me. But now that I'm working on the local administrative advisor program, that's where a good chunk of my pay comes from, and then also from General League funds to help on the advocacy side of things. So thank you, Mayor Burton, for looking out for me. Cam also looks out for me. When I started, he said, "Don't worry, we won't can you after a couple of years." So, but yeah, it's been a great tie into the LAA program. It's been great to get to know a lot of the smaller communities. And we've also had the LAAs throughout the state get to know the ARPA assistants as well. So they've been able to help their communities on a lot of things. But that is the end for me. Are there any other questions?
The only other question I have is, when is your baby due?
January, middle of January. I'm taking after Cam. I'm trying to plan it around session, both times. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Great. Good morning. I will try this mic and hopefully you can all hear me. This is a summary, Reader's Digest summary of the Your Land, Your Plan memorandum that's in your packet. We're very lucky to have received this grant from Intermountain Health in 2022 to do outreach and education to all our members to how to use their assets, public assets, to promote healthy living in their communities. We utilize the money to do statewide outreach, extensive statewide outreach. We traveled all across the state. We also developed yet another unique league product, which is an online assets course, which is hosted on the Strong Towns website. If some of you have heard of that engagement sort of land use advocacy site. Cassidy will also put it on our website when we get things up and running and market that out to our folks. And kind of what I'm most proud of, although I think we did great outreach on this, is we have developed a pilot program with rural Utah with 2 AOGs, R6 and Uinta Basin, to help their AOGs reach out to their members to develop digital zoning maps, because we realized there was a fundamental disconnect that you can't even start the dialogue about assets when you don't even have a zoning map. So we're super excited, hoping that this is going to provide some real fruitful results, and hopefully the state will pick it up and fund the remaining AOGs to do this kind of program if we can demonstrate success. So that's my summary. Any questions? Great.
Thanks, Meg. And then I just wanted to take a moment and give you an overview of our membership engagement for the last year. There's a report that you'll have in your packet that goes over, what is that, about 7 categories of how we tried to engage with our members this year, from annual convention to our newly elected training, local officials day, the mid-year conference, our summer regional events that we started this year, those municipalities that partook in the local administrative advisor project, and then other league engagement, whether that's us visiting town hall, them calling with a question, us spending time with them at someone else's conference, you name it. That's a bit more of a catch-all. Of that, we engaged with 231 of our members, or 90% of our members in this last year, which I think is really a pretty stunning accomplishment, seeing just the diversity that we have in this state, both geographically, population-wise, you name it. And a huge shout out to all of our staff. Really, all of our staff is deeply involved across the board on all of these, and there's no way that we could have done that without the team we have and everyone stepping up to help people within their areas of expertise. So we're really pleased with that. Any questions on that?
Thank you for engaging so many different students. Now I know it's their part too, but it's because of the outreach from Paul and music that we feel comfortable and safe to do so. So whether you can attend one thing or all of them, you know, if you're engaged.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we really looking at here of, it would be amazing if everyone attended everything, but I do really like that we offer a variety of things that, annual is a great opportunity, but it is an expense that a lot of municipalities might not be able to swing. And so whether that is LAA or coming to a regional event or even just calling our office with a question, I am really proud. And I think we're all really proud of the fact that there's kind of something for everyone. Yes, we had thought of that. I just didn't have a time. And as we might chat with you another time, we need to kind of figure out a way to kind of clean up who is attending LPC and keeping track of all of that. Based on our look at all of this, I think everyone who is in LPC is falling into this other league category as well, but that is a great point.
I think that might be helpful in our legislative pursuits if we separate it and say, this is how many cities every week throughout the state are participating and voting on these measures that we bring.
Totally. Any other questions, comments on that engagement report? All right, next is a quick update on our conflict competence work. So we did that training with Professor Rumore earlier this spring. Thank you to all of those who participated in that. She's undergoing the needs assessment right now with her team. And so what that will look like kind of in the near midterm future is right now she's doing interviews with about 25 folks from across the state. Some of you may be contacted for interviews. From there at annual, we're going to be doing 2 big blocks in our workshops for more folks to come in and participate in that, because we know this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in. And we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have their voice heard. And then from that, recognizing that, again, they're doing 25 interviews, and then we'll capture the people at annual. We'll have a survey that goes around to our entire membership. And so hopefully through those 3 mechanisms, we'll have the opportunity to hear from everyone who wants to share their opinion at various kind of levels of depth, whether that is a survey, an interview, a workshop discussion. From there, I know Cam had a great anecdote from his recent experience at NLC that he wanted to share with us as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Molly. Last week when I was with the State League directors, one of the questions I asked the State League directors was what, if anything, they're doing in this space. The director from Pennsylvania spoke up and mentioned that based on the recommendation that I'd given him over a year ago about Tim Shriver, they had Tim Shriver come speak to the Pennsylvania League Convention. It was very well received. But this is the part that I think is really eye-opening. After the failed assassination attempt on former President Trump, the Pennsylvania League reached out to the 3 communities that were in the middle of that situation and shared with them directly the Dignity Index. They've all embraced it and are sharing it broadly within their cities. And so, that's a result of us as the Utah League being the first league in the country to have Tim Shriver come and to engage with the Dignity Index. And now hopefully it can help heal some of the divides in Pennsylvania and elsewhere around the country. I also brought back some interesting things that other state leagues are doing, but it still feels like we're the first league that's trying to go from the principle to the skill building. And there are a lot of state leagues who are really interested in the assessment we're doing now to try to figure out the next steps.
Thanks, Cam. So are there any questions or concerns, comments on the conflict competence? All right, excellent. And then just one quick update on the Taylor Service Award. We have 27 nominees, which is incredible. I don't think we've had that much said. Well, not that I've been working here that long, but it's the most we've had since I've been working here. But we did get word from Jenny Taylor that she is not able to attend annual. She will be out of town. And so we would like to move awarding the Taylor Service Award to Local Officials Day. We feel like it's pretty important that Jenny is there to give that award. And so we just wanted to bring that up to the board today. All right, that's it for engagement. Thank you so much.
Mayor Kafusi, before we move on, I just want to thank the staff publicly. That engagement report that you saw, it's the first time we put something like that together. And it's a reflection of tremendous work by the entire staff. And I think it's also a tribute to this board, because many of you were on the board a couple of years ago when we increased dues to expand our staff and create a deputy director position that can be solely focused on engagement. So thank you to Molly for heading that up. And then all these different programs we've been trying to run, I think have really elevated the value out of the League for Cities. And thank you to the League staff for all the time that they've spent with League members over the last year.
Item number 6, which is our advocacy update, and I'll give you time to Justin. That's just all information.
Okay. All right. Is this on? It is. All right. So lots to talk about in the advocacy world. First off, just want to report back. There's a memo in the packet if you've seen it, but we had a couple of good meetings recently with some of our caucuses. We have the caucus meetings at annual and mid-year, and some of the times we've gotten together with some of the groups in between as well. So we recently met with mayors or their representatives from some of the large cities in the state, the big cities, and had a really good discussion about some of the things we will talk about today, but just got feedback on parking zoning, about alcohol proximity, about a few things that we've also gotten feedback on and gotten data from. So for those of you who have provided back feedback from that meeting, for the few of you that were there, thank you for sending us back information that we've asked for, and also for the continued dialogue. But want to continue checking in with different groups. So as far as the engagement goes, not just at these places, but checking with all the advocacy policy things that we have to talk about. So up here on the board, though, you see all the things that are coming up. Obviously today board meeting, but this is a minor win for me. But the board meeting in the LPC has been split up for a couple of people laugh, but it's really great not to have to run from one to the other. And so we're going to see this for the next couple of months, just with some scheduling things, where the board and the LPC will not be meeting on the same day. But the legislature did not have interim meetings in July. It doesn't mean there weren't a lot of other committees and subcommittees and subgroups of subcommittees meeting between the UEOC, the CHA, and others. But interim will be back online next week. And then you can see there's nonstop meetings between the UEOC, LPC, board meetings, CHA, up until November, when we get through the interim meetings. And then we're only a couple of months out from session at that point. But there's a lot coming up. Just wanted to do the reminder, as always, that if there are issues that are important to your city, if there are issues that you're hearing from other cities that are important, don't hesitate to reach out. We obviously try to get feedback on a lot of things from you here, but there are, as you know, hundreds of bills that we end up tracking during session. So if there's something that's a big deal to your city and you're saying, hey man, we'd really wish you would talk about this more, let us know so that we can talk about it, so we can get feedback. And I think with that, well, no, actually one more thing I want to bring up before we pivot over to some of the specifics is I just want to give a little situational awareness about, there was the Supreme Court hearing on redistricting, Supreme Court case on redistricting. We've talked about that a little bit there. If you're interested in where some of our reasoning was on that, we can send you the legal reasoning. But ultimately, when the court originally was going to hear this case, the legislature reached out and, as you remember, wanted to see if we would do an amicus brief. And we ultimately decided, based on our policy, that wasn't really our lane after getting feedback from the board, from the officers, and decided that we weren't going to file anything in that case. When the Supreme Court came out with their decision a couple of weeks ago, the legislature again reached out and said, would you be interested in putting out a statement on the case? And since we hadn't really put in anything on the amicus brief to begin with, Again, didn't really feel like it was our lane on the redistricting to say anything about that. So fast forward to last week, I was in Louisville for NCSL, talking to legislators that were there, and Senate President and Majority Leader. I ran into them on the sidewalk, and they decided to let me know that they're still a little bit frustrated about this court case. And so not really looking for, any direction or discussion right now, but more than anything, just want to give you the situational awareness, the heads up that there is still some frustration from leadership. And not just with us, there were a lot of organizations that didn't feel like it was their lane to jump into this well. But there's some frustration around other groups not engaging in this court case, not really making statements about it. Some of the concerns that this could trickle down to initiatives at local level. There could be some statewide initiatives that could deal with local issues. So really just the awareness that if you run into legislators, they may ask you, how come you didn't engage on this? Where was the thinking on this one? So if that happens, if you have questions, feel free to let us know. We can send you some of the reasoning if you haven't seen that already. But just really want to make you aware that frustration is still out there. I think they'll hold on to that frustration for a little while. The court case is ongoing. The Supreme Court decision wasn't the end of it. It went back to the lower court for some more decision on that one. But just want to make you aware of that, let you know that it's there. So if you run into them on a conference and get a 10-minute walk with them, they may also ask you what's going on.
So really what you're saying is they think the league had sufficient influence that if we would have spoken in there, the courts would have listened to us and made their vote according to what we put out there. That I'm glad they have that confidence in us. That's good news.
It is a vote of confidence. Yeah, I enjoy that. So yeah.
Justin, I'm curious if they offered any new reasons beyond what they had previously shared of how they think this impacts cities. So it's just they just shared the prior reasons of okay. Well, I look forward to hearing additional reasons at some point.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing new. There's not a new argument. There's not a new angle. It was really just an airing of grievances. Was there a poll? There was not a poll. No. There was a baseball bat. It was at the Louisville Slugger factory, but not a poll. So I think with that, Cam, let's pivot over to what's next.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. On the calendar, one last note, Justin mentioned splitting up board and LPC in the fall. And yes, that's something staff has requested for a while, but one key reason for our recommendation to do that this fall is because of the alignment with CHA and UEOC and just the way the calendar works out. If we kept board and LPC together, we would be having all those meetings after all the CHA UEOC meetings rather than before. And we thought it would be important to check in with the board before votes are being cast in those meetings. Okay, next slide. So we mentioned in the board packet the term storm clouds, and we've spent a lot of time since we last met as a board in June gathering feedback from our members on a variety of topics. So over the next hour, this is really your chance to help allocate the political capital at the Capitol, which is one of the board objectives, on a few different topics. Realistically, we probably won't get to all discussion questions that we have listed. Whatever we don't get to today, we'll hit in September. So the discussion questions are in your packet. We will ask those questions both for discussion aloud, but we'll also have a Slido option so that you can chime in that way as well. Okay, let's jump into housing real quickly. And we wanted to give a quick update on what the different stakeholders are seeking. So in the case of the governor's office, the governor, not only has he been speaking locally about the emphasis on 35,000 new starter homes over the next 5 years, the governor also just last week, well, I guess it wasn't last, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago now, last month, is now the co-chair of the National Housing Crisis Task Force. This includes governors, mayors, developers, and others around the country. One of the things they'll be looking at is public assets. So again, I think we're ahead of the game in Utah because of the Your Land, Your Plan program, but there are 3 topics that they wanted to look at, public assets being one, and another is the California approach, which really has been heavy on state preemption of local land use authority. So the governor's going to be the co-chair of this task force. Steve Waldrop's involved in this task force as well. And then there'll be other folks from around the country. That's fine. You can go back to PowerPoint now. The guiding our growth is also the centerpiece of a lot of the discussion this summer. These were some of the guiding our growth responses, ranging from redevelopment of commercial areas to include housing, more townhomes, duplexes, ADUs, smaller lots, and more owner occupancy. Okay, next slide. From the Property Rights Coalition, which includes the builders, the realtors, and others, these are really the top 5 that they've been raising consistently during the summer. They made an official proposal last week to standardize parking requirements in residential areas and statewide. I'll go into those in more detail momentarily. They've also been raising the issue of some sort of state mandate around external ADUs, expediting administrative review, which we'll do a little deeper dive on in a moment, change how cities require bonding, and then upzoning all residential areas in the state, which is, again, a tactic we've seen in other states. Next slide, please. We've also seen in the last few months more and more outside groups that have been publishing on housing, whether it's Utah Foundation, Libertas, Envision Utah. The Sutherland Institute is hosting a housing forum in a couple of months that is really targeting local government. And then next week, there's an event that the Urban Land Institute is hosting where the keynote speaker just penned a book that said how zoning destroyed America. So it just gives you a sense of kind of what's happening in other groups. And we've been responding everywhere with our key principles. Next slide, Carson. That this board reaffirmed in May, but are a couple of years old now. How does the proposal preserve the quality of life of current and future residents? How does it pay for infrastructure? Does the proposal result in units that are more directly affordable? And will the proposal result in more home ownership? So to simplify it, quality of life, infrastructure, affordable home ownership. And so we keep driving those points home in every setting that we are in. And then within the CHA, we've been pushing, we need to unlock the units that have been planned for. Infrastructure is not free, and so we've got to figure out how to pay for it. And to the credit of the legislature this past session, that was really the focus. And we got to yes on some really important bills that are trying to pay for infrastructure, ensuring affordable home ownership opportunities. And we've now added in all communities because we've heard loud and clear from older cities wanting to make sure that home ownership isn't left behind in those older cities, and then promote home ownership, not corporate ownership, also including short-term rentals in there. Okay, next slide. Okay, Cassidy about killed me on the drive here when I showed her this slide because there was a lot of text. But the good news, but the good news is it's a big screen, so you can read it better than you could at our office. The Property Rights
Neither Cam nor Cassidy was driving, for the record.
Yeah,
so.
that is also true. That is also true. So the Property Rights Coalition presented this concept to the CHA a week and a half ago. We opposed it. We have several league reps on the CHA, including Mayor Silvestrini, who's on the league board, and others. And then they said, okay, well then bring us back something that you think would work. So the PRC proposal was number 1, a state standard that single family units could only require, or cities could only require 2 parking spots per single family housing unit. Number 2, a state standard that says 9B18 should say 9X18, so 9 feet by 18 feet. Number 3, tandem parking equals 2 spots. So if a townhome is built that has tandem parking is front to back of the car, that counts as toward the parking minimum of 2 spots. A lot of cities only count it as 1.5. And then the city cannot require a garage or carport. So that's their proposal as of a week and a half ago. Last week, we met with our LPC advisory group on this. Mayor Silvestrini was on that call. Seth was on that call. A few others here were on that call. And we told them we're going to be reporting back to the league board what we've heard from the membership. So there's a bunch, okay? So on the numbers align with the PRC proposal. So we asked for data from that group around how we're currently counting parking in residential areas. Some cities count it based on number of bedrooms. Some just have a blanket policy of 2.25 for all single family regardless of size. Some do it based on size, some do it based on neighborhood. So Councilmember Dugan, Salt Lake sent us your parking ordinance, and you require spots. The number of spots varies if you're in a traditional neighborhood setting versus if you are in an urban setting versus if you're near transit. So cities have taken a variety of approaches. And so before we're prepared to make a recommendation on how to respond to number one, we needed to get a better understanding of our status quo first. With number two, we actually surveyed the full LPC with a larger standard in February, and you can see a large number of LPC members were concerned about a state standard of that garage size. And then the majority of LPC members were also concerned about counting tandem as 2 spots. And the question that we had asked was tandem if it's a small lot, small unit. So not just tandem in general, but trying to bring it down to a small lot. Then when you get into 4, is about the city cannot require a garage or carport. We've actually asked this question a variety of ways, which is why you see 4A, B, C, D, E, and F. Because we're trying to see, is there a path forward here that's consistent with our principles? And Carson, will you go ahead and slide to the next slide? So I'll start with 4A, B, and C, because we feel like this is an area where those numbers are quite high and feels like the starting point for a counter proposal in this space. So you may recall, we actually asked that 4A question at the board meeting, the painful one at local officials day, where 80% of you said if a city requires a garage, then it should count toward parking. And we have some cities who actually don't do that. So we felt like, that's 80% of you said you were comfortable with that approach. And, that makes a lot of sense. So for B and for C, the advisory group said, we're willing to reduce garage requirements, garage/carport requirements, if there's a deed restriction for ownership or if there's a deed restriction for affordability. And you can see those are high numbers, different numbers, but high numbers. And so long as you still can require parking on site. So you're not just ignoring the parking. So we felt like from a staff perspective, this would be a good starting point for us to build counter proposal, bring back to LPC next week. Now, interestingly, yep, I'm almost done laying it out and then we'll open it up for discussion. Go to the next slide. With 4D, 4E, 4F, remember, if LPC, our bylaws require consensus to hit 60% of voting members present. So if these were bills, we wouldn't be at 60%. 55% of the advisory group last week also said they were concerned about a mandate of no garage or carport. So it was fascinating. When we asked the question, are you willing to reduce it? Really high numbers. When we asked it as part of the state mandate, that number dropped quite a bit. Still close to 60%, but not quite there. And then, so 4D and 4E still have the deed restriction piece. And then 4F was our effort to try to ask the question of, is there a surrogate for a deed restriction? So one concern we've heard over and over again from cities is that deed restrictions are hard. They're hard to enforce. They're hard to track. And a lot of cities don't have the capacity to do it. So if you hinge everything on a deed restriction, you may not get any. But we've heard frustration. In fact, I'll share one city, I won't name the city, but one city reached out to me right after our advisory group meeting last week and said, we just did all of these things in land use that the builder has asked for, really small lots. We've reduced the parking requirements. We've done this, and this, but the builder said, we're still going to build 2,000 square foot houses on these small lots, and we're still going to start them at $550,000. And the city said, well, this is incredibly frustrating. We did everything you asked and it's still not getting there. So then I asked the city, well, did you talk to them about the actual size of the unit to urge them or require them that we'll rezone it if you build the small unit? And they said, no, we actually hadn't had that conversation. So small unit does not guarantee affordability or ownership, but could it be a surrogate in certain circumstances if we go down this path? And as you can see, the numbers, our folks were pretty split on it. And then two key things that came up in that discussion last week that we didn't survey with a number, but we had open-ended feedback, was that if the state said you can't require garages, code enforcement is going to be a challenge. So we need to address that issue. And then design standards, that if we go down this path of no garages or carports, then we would feel more comfortable if the city had more control over design standards so that the neighborhood still looks and is a high quality neighborhood, even without that amenity. Okay, that's the background. We're going to open up here for discussion because what we need from you is the CHA's expecting us to bring back a counter proposal at the end of the month. Here's what we've heard from the membership so far. We'd like your feedback. Right now, we want to start with 4A, B, and C as our starting point, but we'd also welcome your feedback on 4D, 4E, 4F, and then anything else from the PRC proposal. So Nick, you said there are folks online, Mayor Kafusi, I think Mayor Burton's chomping at the bit to speak up. And then we've put this question in Slido as well. So let's have the open discussion, but then at some point we'll need to move on, and this still gives you a chance to contribute.
Okay, I want to thank the state for making this so clear for us. We know exactly what to do, even though each of our circumstances are different and we have different communities and different sizes in our communities. With this is great because all the rural areas will have little houses with no garages with the great big lots because of this, and then all the small ones too. It's just wonderful because we don't have to make any decisions or choices now. It's all made for us and we can just move forward, and it'll make our life so easy now because it's all set out and it'll solve all of our problems and everybody will have a house and there'll be no more problems anymore going forward. So thank you for the state. Take care of it for us.
Your sarcasm is fine.
We also have Mayor Silvestrini online mentioned. We've tried to link some of these requirements like deferring building garages to measurable, enforceable affordability and owner occupation. We also have asserted that restrictions upon design guidelines restrict our ability to permit quote unquote mansion home type missing middle housing. And that's all we have from online.
I'll just add to Mayor Burton's comment. We also won't have to inspect any buildings, but we'll probably still be responsible when they fall off the hillside like they did in Draper. You know, I would like to see us put together something like Spanish Fork did on the inspection issue, where we have, you know, some of the footage from Draper or other instances, if we can come up with them, where, you know, where builders have tried to scam us on the inspection side, just to show how terrible eliminating, you know, city inspectors would be for the you know, our communities and the quality of building. And the other thing is, we haven't even let the you know, the requirement that every municipality have like 3 options of fallback when we don't do our inspections on time, which most of us do. You know, we've never had to rely upon that in my city, but we haven't even let that bake before we're, you know, back battling the PRC on eliminating inspectors again. It's crazy.
I'm going to start with a little bit of a punch and then get to hopefully a suggestion that's productive. But I really appreciate the PRC giving us a bunch of options that I don't think do a whole lot to solve the problem that we're having, and especially if number one is standardized parking requirements. Like, let's be real and let's be serious about a really serious discussion. And I don't really see how standardizing parking requirements is in this space. And so it's really frustrating that that's a shot that they take in terms of talking about how to solve the housing crisis. And I think we all see, as we have developments in our communities, we see the story that you just outlined of a city that does a development that they think is really going to have an impact on housing price and provide a product that will be beneficial to those looking for a first-time home. And then they find that the developer is going to do something outside of what was the hope, the vision, the dream, and it's going to be beyond the reach of a first-time home buyer. These types of things, parking specifically, often and maybe most often are driven by the market. And they know that better than us. And so when we talk about garages, and I think your research that you started last week from our meeting, that when we talk about garages, most homes are built and exceed any requirement if a city has a requirement, because the market says you need to have a 3-car garage in order to sell this house for $800,000 or more or whatever. So I'm not really interested in maybe responding tit for tat on their proposal is parking this, our proposal is parking that. I'd almost rather say, here's what we think is important to solving, a next step in solving it. And if we have to talk about parking, I guess we do, but it just seems like it's not an issue that merits a lot of time. This isn't something that's going to solve the housing. Now they're going to say, well, if we don't have to build a garage, it will decrease the price of a home. I don't disagree with that statement, but I don't think anybody's going to build a house these days without a garage, because every family wants one. My daughter that has a $375,000 townhome wants a garage, and she bought a townhome that has one. And now every house on that street that has a truck doesn't park their truck in the garage, not because the garage is full, because the truck doesn't fit. Because it's built to a size that doesn't fit a pickup truck. And if you're in Spanish Fork, you have one. You also have a trailer and a few other toys. Right? That's just the nature of our community. And we're probably different than some of yours, I guess. So anyways, that's part of my frustration about this. And I'm thinking over here, not just of complaining. I'm trying to think of how do I respond in a way that's productive. And in a few moments, I'll probably have more productive thought. But I don't really want to come back with, here's our response to parking, because I feel like it's a red herring. This is an issue that the PRCA wants and has nothing to do with housing affordability, but because there's an opportunity, they're asking for it. All right. That's it.
We have a hand up online from Mayor Randall.
Thanks. Hey, I agree about parking and, is it a hill to die on for affordable housing? The hard part gets, and I hope you can hear me okay, because I have my earbuds in and sometimes they're great and sometimes they suck. But obviously St. George is this extremely old community. And so back in the day, the pioneer homes obviously didn't have garages. And out in the area where my parents live, there weren't garages. They've since remodeled their house and put on a 2-car garage. So I was driving around looking at, do we have, right now, yes, we could send code enforcement out because there are some people with garages that are full of crap. But you're going to get that. I think that just boils back to the homeowner. Even if they had a garage and it was full of crap and clothes, they would probably have some trickling out. But we have a member on our city council that, is a parking czar. Every single subdivision that comes through, anything, it's parking. And she went so far as to want to require a homeowner that we state that there could only be cars parked in the parking garage. Now, for us that are, people have their property rights. I told her, okay, at that time, my son was living with us and had everything from his house in our garage. And I said, how do you do that? That's so wrong to do. And they're just, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle for us. Any townhome that's been proposed, any apartment that's been proposed, it comes down to parking, and she doesn't want people parking on the street. And then it just goes back to the whole affordability issue. Right now in St. George, people aren't selling their homes. There is no way I'm going to sell my house when I have a 2.5% interest rate to go to a nicer home with a lot more
an interest rate that my payment would be a lot more money. And so people are sitting on their homes. And so that means there is a lack of inventory out there. And that's what it boils down to. We have more demand than we have supply. And right now with inflation and with the cost of, and with your interest rates, I don't see fixing this until the economy settles. It's just frustrating. You can tell by my voice. I'm out of words. I don't know. I don't have the answers. We tried doing a housing summit. We're trying to work with our home builders, but still, if you have a small home without a garage, you're still going to have an expensive product. And when people go in and they get an interest rate that's the interest rates that we have right now, they're going to have an expensive payment. And so it's just not working. So anyway, I wish I had answers, but I don't.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Randall. And you're spot on the interest rate point and the market point. It's why we've said for 6 years now that there are market forces outside of local government control. So this has been helpful feedback. I want to just hit two quick things before we move to the next question. Number one, the governor's office is really interested in this topic, in part because there is a builder in northern Utah who has put together a product that just got approved in unincorporated Weber County that is not including garages or carports, but is including on-site spots where you could build a garage in the future. So there's on-site parking and building smaller units between 900 and 1,300 square feet, and is trying to hit a price point below $400,000. And there's a lot of argument back and forth over how much a garage actually adds to the price. But I think there is general agreement, as Seth said a moment ago, that if you don't have a garage, it'll sell less than a unit that does have a garage. So that's a general statement. I see Mayor Shepherd as the trained realtor in the room giving me the stink eye. I'm speaking in generalities because there are other factors at play there. So there's, from our perspective, there is the point of, if we don't think builders are going to build this type of product, then is it worth using our political capital to fight against statutory direction to try to get to this type of product? Or do we say, fine, we're willing to do X so long as that type of product gets built? And again, a huge component being the affordability and the ownership piece. Let me pause there. Some good comments online that I've been scanning here. And so we'll go through those comments. Is there any other comment anybody wants to make aloud? Let's go, Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you. And I just want to go back to Seth's point about Spanish Forks and the garage not being big enough for the truck. And then you look at some smaller, older neighborhoods where there is a single car garage that maybe fits a small car for any reason. It won't even fit an SUV because it's not tall enough and it's not wide enough. So, and you have build out neighborhoods that also aren't going to see any new housing. And then, so Salt Lake City did, it depends on the areas. And if you're near transit, you don't need as many parking spots. Nowadays, 3-car garages are the norm. There's a lot of places where there's only single family garages. So there's so many different variables here. And I think a garage and parking are two different things. And I would just say, try to stay away from the garage side of the house, because that is a owner and a builder's decision there. I may not want a garage. You may want a 3-car garage. But I also think we need to tie in the transit side of this, because we keep on talking about having these garages and this parking. But if we want to try to reduce some of the traffic stuff and also make it affordable housing, or not affordable housing, but affordable living, you gotta look at the transit. Because if we just don't look at the transit, then I think we're just going to go in this endless soup. So I think we have to tie it somehow into public transportation and transit at the community node.
Perfect. And one thing we did not put on the slide, but we did ask about in the advisory group, a sizable number, I believe it was 56% of the advisory group was open to reducing parking requirements near transit. which again is what some cities have done in their ordinances to date, and we're trying to gather that info. I see several people in the Slido have referenced affordable home ownership, and then, concern around code enforcement and other things. So Mayor Walker, let's give you the last word on this topic, and then we'll move to the next one.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I kind of feel a little bit like Seth said at the beginning. It's the annual, here's the string, go chase it league, but we're gonna let you chase this string, but we're really not gonna do it anyway. We're still gonna build what we're gonna build, but we just want you to keep chasing around all this little stuff that's supposedly the city's fault, but isn't. I think maybe we do what you said, which is support, X size lot, X price point, deed restricted, build whatever you want.
Hearing you correctly,
Yeah.
jump right to the outcome. If
Yeah,
you
right
do
to the
this,
outcome.
We're there.
Because that's what it's all about, right? The outcome. I mean, we're supposed to get to the outcome.
Right.
I don't know what else you do. Otherwise, you just keep going back and forth trying to figure out, I don't know where they want us to go with this, but if you say, look, 2,000 square foot lot, and it's below 400,000, build whatever you want.
Yeah, so if you do this,
Yeah.
then
and-
we're willing to do X, which is really the foundation of what we did last session with.
But it's got to be under
Hopspace and-
400,000. It's got to be deed restricted. Can't be
Right.
owned by BlackRock or whoever. And,
Yep.
then they got to let our code enforcement people enforce crap in the yard.
Mhm. Yep. Are there any-
otherwise we're just
are there any push-
chasing the old string. I mean, it's
Yeah, I
just
agree with you. Yeah, and I'm certainly tired of chasing strings. Is there any pushback on what Mayor Walker outlined? Because I think what Mayor Walker outlined it is a smart political and policy approach. I see head nods in the room, but
I think it's important. I agree with what Mayor Walker said and with what Seth said. I think it's important though that if we're saying, fine, hit these targets and then you can build whatever you want, that we're still insisting that they be inspected, that we're not building them on a hillside that's going to slide off. I mean, if left unchecked, we'll get things that will cause us lots of problems down the road. So I agree, yes, in concept, saying draw a box. And if they can put something in the box instead of these ticky-tacky, what about this on garages? What about this on setbacks? And what about this on curb and gutter?
perfect. Excellent clarification. Okay, if other thoughts come to mind, let's go Mayor Johnson.
I think the cities need to separate. What do people want? Sorry, we need to focus on what I think that's our job. I've been in a profession for over 40 years, right? And I do work a lot with a lot of landowners. I work with developers of standards, specifications, that sort of thing. It was probably 20 years ago. We were terrified of what we were seeing in California. This property owner come in and try to develop his property, and what we were seeing in California had taken over a year. Then all of a sudden, it started taking 2 years, then 3 years. I got 2 projects right now that we've been in the process for 4 years now, trying to figure things. The regulation keeps increasing, and this isn't regulation to what people actually need to do. This is regulation that cities often just want to see neighborhood that right? For some reason we think that's our responsibility. I'm not sure that it is. I think that's the core question. Is that really our job? And that's a hard one to answer. But reality, things like garages, requiring landscape, requiring fences and everything, those are things that realistically do that. That's how I grew up in my square foot home, bedroom home. We all want homes for our children. We don't want to live. Maybe I don't think they want that to have a home. They want to be able to build the equity. They gotta have a starting point. Without a starting point, they're never going to get that, right? I've had to help 2 of my sons already get into their home. I've got a daughter that wants to get in a home. My conversations with her, she's like, we're never going to have it. I think a lot of us probably had that same conversation. Mayor, I'm not sure your mic is on. Is it not on? Oh,
I'm sorry, it wasn't on. I'm sorry. You want me to start again? Okay, I'm sorry to those online. I didn't, shorter version. Okay, bullet points here. I think as cities, we have a responsibility to focus on what people need, not what they want, right? And they need a place to live. There's a lot of things they can build in their homes later on once they get in it, but they need to be able to build equity in a home. They don't necessarily need garages. They don't need carports. They don't need landscaping. They don't need fences. Those are things I think as municipalities, we like to enforce because it makes us feel comfortable that neighborhoods are going to have longevity, that they're going to be nice places for people to live in the future. We want that, but I don't think that's our role to guarantee that, right? I think there's so much regulation that we're placing that there is a regulation, a cost associated with regulation that we need to be careful about. I think we need to focus, what's the bare minimum that somebody can get to get into a home, to afford a structure that they can move in, and then they can add equity to that as they go. That's just my thought.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Let's go, council member, and then we'll move to the next topic. Or online, you do.
I think this is on, right? I think Mayor Shepherd said at a prior board meeting that if you mandate a maximum price for a house, you're almost guaranteeing the building of like future ghettos, but maybe I'm mistaken. So I just wanted you to revisit that.
Yeah, you are. I know. Well, and we've had that conversation on a national level too, that if you're putting a minimum in there, or maximum in saying that, in order to do this, it has to be below 400,000, that you're forcing developers to create something that in all likelihood doesn't stand the test of time. I mean, and I'm out with buyers all the time. Buyers will hold off on buying a house if there's not a garage. They'll hold off buying a townhome if there's not a garage. Even if there's parking provided and, everyone's got a parking space, they'll still hold off. We're trying to create something and telling, and I'd love to know who's building up in Weber County. I would love to see that sit for 2 years. Well, I'd love to see it sit for 5 and tell me what it looks like 5 years from now. Because we're going to build ghetto, and that's not what any of us want, is to build future blight.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Shepherd. Nielsen Homes is the one who's doing the project in Weaver County. And actually what we'll do is we'll circulate the slideshow that they presented to the Commission on Housing Affordability to this board, so you guys can see it, because I think that would be helpful, again, for you to have that situational awareness of what's being discussed there. And Mayor Johnson, they framed it very similarly to what you were just describing of we can hit these needs, and then people can add the wants later, and we'll plan for the wants on the garage parking side. The question is if the proposal is within the inland port area. It is not. Okay. So great feedback. What we will do
I
between
go
now.
not necessarily directly on this question, but what can we do as a league maybe to promote the building of condominiums again? That kind of thing. I mean, if what Mayor Shepherd's saying, that I'm just tired of chasing the string of, we need you to come over here on the parking, but we're really just going to build whatever we're going to build. But I mean, a condominium used to be a thing you could buy as a new buyer. A lot of people, that's where they started. I always hear all the reasons, but can we direct this conversation somewhere there?
Yes, and we have a work group working on that now. Mayor Silvestrini is part of it. Before I go a little deeper on that, I'm just going to summarize what I think I've heard here over the last half an hour on this topic. Carson, can you go back to the previous slide so that A, B, and C are highlighted for A, B, and C? So 4, B, and C are that nexus to affordability and ownership. And that's, we've heard that repeatedly here. So that'll be the crux of our counter proposal in this space, taking what Mayor Johnson and Mayor Walker said, combined with the other comments here. We will keep building out like what a proposal could look like here based on 4A, B, and C to bring back to LPC next week for larger member consideration. Let's jump to the next slide. Oh, Councilmember McKay.
Thank you. I was just at a conference and they discussed some sample policies that had to do with small developers and kind of infill. And I thought it was a really good discussion because I feel like if some of these first-time home buyers can get into a project that isn't and doesn't have a HOA, it can really, you know, allow them to qualify for more. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like as cities, and even my city has been frustrating me lately, I feel like the municipal government is there for the health and safety and public welfare. But when we start mandating aesthetics and what the neighbors want is more important than what's being built. And, you know, my husband and I even have a couple lots in Riverton that they're in a high traffic area. And so we're like, the cheapest house we could build would be 500,000 or 600,000 on this corner lot. Nobody wants it because it's on a corner lot. But in Riverton, they won't allow duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes. Even some that currently exist there that are 60, 70 years old, the people can't replace them because, you know, and so I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm seeing the other side of it of, man, we've been trying to get this through the Planning Commission and City Council. We're going on 5 or 6 months now. And, you know, and so it is interesting. And sometimes I just feel like, yeah, the cost of regulation and when the city's trying to dictate too many things, it just makes it not feasible. And, you know, so I don't know, a lot of times I feel like we are pushing back as a city, let us do what we want, but I feel like there's a lot of cities that are doing too much and regulating too much. And I really have to ask, you know, how is this harming the neighbor? Is it just the neighbor's preference of, you know, even like storage containers? I don't like a storage container, and so nobody else in my neighborhood should be able to, or we're going to make them put an inferior siding on it, which is something Riverton's looking at right now, whereas the corrugated metal, you know, I don't know. And so sometimes I just feel like cities do try and regulate too much and go beyond what a municipal government is for. And I feel like that's part of what is causing the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. And I think the question of political capital at the Capitol, which this board's responsible for, those questions and comments I hear all the time at the Capitol. And I know which conference you were talking about because I was there with you. Okay, we do
Just
have
a quick
a few
question.
more topics to still hit. So let's
Just a quick question, because one of the things that we've noticed and other people I've talked with is you get a request from a builder, they're going to build this area, but you don't know till later that it is corporate ownership or institutional ownership, or it's going to be all rentals. You don't have any way to even know that when you're approving it in your city. And so I think that's another aspect that we really need to talk about, because if the governor says build these homes and we are, and yet they will never be owner occupied, that's not on us because we followed our proper procedure. We don't know who's going to ultimately own it.
under base zoning, yes.
Yeah.
What you can do through a deed restriction or through a development
Right.
agreement. But you're right on the sequencing piece that if you're just going with the base zoning and you don't have those requirements in zoning, it's not until the end. And by then the city's influence
Out
is
of it,
gone. 'Cause the
right.
city's
Well,
influence is
and you
upfront.
might not have a development agreement if it's a small builder or they're building just 2 or 3. You
Right.
don't have an agreement because it's not a big piece of land. And so those individual builds can end up being all rentals and you would never know.
Okay, speaking of rentals, let's pivot to the next piece here because we're running out of time. Carson, can you go 2 slides ahead? So we had a really good discussion with the large city caucus a couple of weeks ago on the focus around home ownership in legacy cities, tourism towns, and beyond. So basically everywhere, right? The Property Rights Coalition has been open to good dialogue around condos. So Mayor Walker brought up condos. There's a subgroup that's looking at the different barriers, whether it's insurance or financing or otherwise. I want you to focus on the ULCT side right now. We've surveyed the membership around condos, lots of support there. We've asked it a variety of ways. We asked the advisory group last week around the objective of disincentivizing corporate ownership. By far, the most popular concept is changing the primary residential property tax deduction. That would also likely require constitutional amendments. So it's not as easy as 3815 and 1. It's 3815 and 1 and 500,000 registered voters. Number 3 here, this was one option that we surveyed last week, a vacancy tax. We've seen this in other states. I talked to several league directors last week about how their vacancy taxes have worked. I want to thank Provo City, Mayor Kafusi, your council staff gave us a bunch of research that they had already done in this space. So there are different potential paths forward there. And then we're still looking at different short-term rental pieces. So we don't have a proposal from us yet on this, and there's not a proposal from other stakeholders yet on this. But as you can see, there's a lot of appetite in the membership to try to do something to, using our term, disincentivize corporate ownership. And we've heard from some key legislators that they are open to disincentivizing corporate ownership, but they said, we don't know what that means, so you guys figure it out. And we're still trying to figure it out. So with that being said, Carson, will you open up the Slido question? We asked this of the Large Cities Caucus. I want to give you a chance in this meeting too, if there's anything else that comes to mind. And those of you who chimed in on the parking one, we will go through all of those in detail after this meeting. But are there any other thoughts that come to mind from this group around disincentivizing corporate-owned rental housing to incentivize more home ownership? Councilmember Doohan?
My question, and I think you already asked it right there, was about define corporate owner rental.
Yes, thank you for catching the nuance. We intentionally for these questions have not defined it, but it would clearly need to be defined. So for example, one thing we've been digging deeper on is the good landlord program and the disproportionate rental fee that already exists in code. So I'm looking around the room. Actually, I don't think there's any city in here that still has a good landlord program in the way it used to be designed. But state law currently does allow for a city to do a disproportionate rental fee on certain types of rental units if it's 4 units or more. Okay. And that is so long as the city can show that those units have a disproportionate impact on public safety. So it was not designed to disincentivize corporate ownership or incentivize home ownership. It was designed to recognize that these units have more public safety challenges. So therefore we can charge them more because the study shows it. But it could be worth looking at that type of fee, but you would not want, or I could see pushback at the legislature and from our own members if you treated BlackRock the same as grandma who owns a second unit that they're renting out, right? They're both corporate owned, but very different scale. Likewise, an apartment building of 100 units is different than a single family home that's being rented. No one's ever going to own a unit in the apartment complex, but that single family unit could be an ownership unit. But again, those definitions will matter, which is why we don't have a proposal yet. We wanted to give you as a board a chance to answer this question. We got really good feedback from the Large City Caucus a couple of weeks ago. So if there's anything else, throw it up here, Kate or Councilmember Bradshaw.
Kate is always just fine. I'd love to noodle on this a little bit more. If we were to try and reframe back to what Seth's comments were about, saying you can build whatever in this box, but we're not going to chase all these little pieces anymore. Are there ways on the front end to say you can have tandem garages, you can do these other things as long as you aren't going to do this? Like the challenge I want to noodle on is we don't ever know who the owner is going to be until way after it's been zoned, approved, and built. So I don't, besides the property tax component or other tax structures, I'm not sure what we can do, but I would love to spend more time, brainstorming with some experts on what that could be, because it's so hard to know until the very end, last thing, that it's going to be purchased by a corporate conglomerate, not grandma's trust fund.
In addition to that, they don't disclose to you that they're a corporate owner. They come in and they're, you know, a family LLC or whatever. We have a few properties that are corporate owned, used as corporate retreats. And so they say, well, we don't really rent it out, so we can't, it's just a single family home, but then, you know, 100 Japanese people are walking down the street taking pictures of everybody. And we're like, you have a lot of people staying overnight for your guests. But because there's no disclosure and we don't have any way, we don't have enough enforcement officers to, well, we only have one part-time. So we don't have any way to check and see who's doing what. So even if we changed the property tax and it's still listed under a single family ownership, we're not getting a benefit. And there's no way to even figure that out. So somewhere along the line, there's got to be a little bit more integrity in the ownership package.
Yeah, great points. I asked this question of the state leagues last week, and probably 15 leagues came up to me afterward and said, we're really interested in this too. Let us know when you figure it out. Because you basically have your regulatory power and you have your power to tax and power to assess a fee. And is there something you can pull in one of those that will accomplish the disincentive and the incentive? And several people here referencing property tax. Roger reminded me via text a moment ago when I said it 38, 15, and 1 plus 500,000 people. He reminded me constitutional amendment actually needs 50 votes in the House and 20 in the Senate. So it's actually 50 and 20 plus 500,000 or however many. And no, yeah, the governor actually doesn't sign on. So but the point is it would be a very heavy lift, not impossible, but a heavy lift. And then whoever the most recent anonymous is a good point. Would the tax benefit actually affect corporate ownership? To be determined. 2 data points that we are currently gathering that we'll bring back to this board. One is on short-term rentals. We've contracted with the Gardner Policy Institute to update data about the spread of short-term rentals across the state. That data will be available this fall. And then Salt Lake County contracted with a national firm to do a tracking of all of the corporate owned house or all of the ownership of every unit in Salt Lake County, and then trying to break it down by corporate ownership or otherwise. And they're going to be presenting that data to us in the next few weeks, and that could be helpful as we proceed. Okay, next question. Yeah, definition, corporate ownership is key indeed. So you can keep throwing things in here that we will look at, keep building out a potential proposal here.
Just a quick thought, Cam. To me, it feels like corporate ownership and a home being rented by a primary residence on a list, you know, some kind of hierarchy is better than a short-term rental. And so I don't know I don't know who said it. Maybe it was you, Kate, a moment ago. Getting a few other people of other minds, other disciplines in the room to talk about this, I think would be helpful, because I don't know that we're going to outsmart that. And I think with where housing prices have gone, corporations have probably started to really identify it. This is a great investment, right? And I think we're seeing that. So if it's primarily a residence, if it is a residence, even though it's a rental, that's better than short-term rental. And I feel like if we had to pick a fight, I'd rather focus on short-term rentals because of what I think are more significant impacts on the community than rentals. Rentals can't be all that bad. They're full, right? So it's not altogether bad.
They're full some places. My younger brother manages some rental properties in Davis County, and over the weekend we were talking about what he's seeing in the marketplace. And he was talking about how he was seeing a significant competition because his properties are close to Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake's prices have softened so dramatically in the apartment rental market. And we may have overbuilt rentals in an apartment style of rentals versus a single family home style of rentals. And I don't know, not a rented single family home versus a townhome versus a podium style apartment are all just very different.
Okay, here's our last piece on the housing side. And this is our proposal to you is on August 19th, a week from today. We want to come back to the broader membership at LPC and propose doing a deeper dive in the plan review space in particular. As a reminder, current state law requires cities to do a plan review within 14 days upon receiving a complete application. Jared, probably every day, I would say, between you, Meg, Justin, and me, we get a complaint from somebody about a city not meeting the plan review deadlines. And sometimes that's because the city's not meeting the 14 days, or there's a lot of frustration about when does the 14 days actually start. And we acknowledge that. So number one, PVRC frustration, then our response is number one on the other side, and two, et cetera. We have had cities who've told us that they are not meeting the 14 days. They've acknowledged that to us. And part of that is because the law as currently drafted is quite vague. And so from a political capital to capital perspective, we have a lot of cities that don't want to touch this law because it's better to answer the devil you know than the devil you don't. But we also are finding ourselves in a predicament where we are spending political capital defending a law that is vague and is causing problems for both sides. Do we want to be spending that political capital defending a law that is vague and causing problems for both sides? Or do we roll up our sleeves and try to fix the law in a way that makes more sense for local governments? Again, some of our cities don't want us to do that, and they've made that very clear to us. So anyway, you can see 1, 2, and 3 are really plan review focused. But we'd like next week to basically say to the members, we know you don't like this, but we think it would be better to try to fix it once and for all than kind of stay in this no man's land where we're defending a difficult status quo. Any thoughts on that plan review piece before I pivot to inspections on number 4?
Because some builders are saying, I turned it in, 14 days start. And our staff looks at it, oh, well, you didn't do these last 3. So we don't think it starts until after you bring it back complete. And so I think that's where there's a lot of problems in terms of staff saying, we're not going to put this forward if it's not complete. And at times, I know our staff has said, okay, we'll start it, but you have to have it finished. But there's nothing written that says they have to have it finished in time. And so then the 14 days is up and it's not complete. And then we're the ones that look bad.
And you're the ones doing the work for builders. And that's a frustration we hear all the time. So unless there's pushback from this group setting the overall policy, we'd like to come back to LPC next week and propose a deeper dive in 1, 2, and 3. In number 4 on the inspections piece, there's already an SB 185 2.0. We've got a copy of it that would allow builders to hire their own inspectors, which we fought off last year. But one of the arguments they're using is that SB 185 last year, what we agreed to was that cities would have your backup list. That if you couldn't do it in 3 days, you'd have a backup list. You could have an interlocal agreement with other cities. And based on our preliminary outreach to cities, a significant number of cities have not yet done that. And so that's now being used against us. So part of it is we need to make sure that cities are doing what SB 185 required, but then just know that the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee legislature last month passed SB 185 to allow builders to hire their own inspectors over the opposition of the Tennessee League. So, we want to talk a little deeper at LPC because they'll have a broader cross-section of folks here, but we've got to get that interlocal agreement thing figured out.
In your research, briefly with these cities, are you finding that they are not hitting the 3 days too, in addition to not having their interlocal, their contracts, or are they hitting the 3 days, but they just don't have the contract and the builders are mad that they haven't checked that well?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. Then number 5 is just FYI. We got the proposal from the PRC Friday night. So we haven't even dug deep in it yet, but it's around surety bonds and bonds around infrastructure. And then number 6, that we actually did Slido, the LPC advisory group. They were really supportive of the concept of expediting identical plans, but the devil's in the detail on the definition. And then the point we keep bringing up in all of these things is the nexus back to affordable home ownership. So we won't ask you a Slido question on this topic today, but we did just want to bring this to your attention that this is what we plan to bring forward to LPC next week. Jared, is there anything you want to add since you've been right in the middle of all of these pieces? No? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it was very efficient. Okay. So thank you for the feedback. We will be reporting back to LPC next week. We'll build on the comments you've given us here today. So thank you for that. The next discussion question, Mayor Kafusi, in this space was about the Olympics. Unfortunately, Mayor Ramsey's flight was delayed, and as she's our UEOC rep, and the UEOC is what's talking about Olympics. So she asked if we would postpone that discussion question until September when she's back. So we'll postpone that one. Justin, I'll turn it to you for the LPC related questions, and then that'll be
All
the
right.
end of the LPC section.
Yeah, great. So a couple things with LPC.
Oh, sorry. On the speak up piece, Mayor Kafusi had put in a comment earlier about kind of the message we want to get across at annual. So Carson, will you open up that Slido question real quick? Our staff plan for annual next month is to lean into those 4 key principles: quality of life, infrastructure, affordability, and home ownership. But we also want to lean into infrastructure is not free and making it easier for you to talk to legislators about the cost of infrastructure. Are there any other components that you think should be part of the messaging at annual? Mayor Kafusi's last hurrahs in the speak up space. Is there anything else in the housing infrastructure growth space that you would like us to work into messaging and materials for next month? So we'll just open that up to give you a second to answer that question, then we'll turn to Justin. Yep. Thank you, Mayor Wright, for that comment. We'll leave this open for another minute. We see a lot of people are still typing, and then Justin, we'll turn it to you to do that piece. Then Mayor Kafusi, I think that's it for the advocacy section today.
All right. So a couple of things I just want to bring up. 2 things. First one is we're looking at making some changes to the LPC bylaws and organization. And this one's not a big change. But what we found this last year, and we've had a few conversations about this, so this may sound familiar, is some of our affiliate groups. So you've got a lot of groups, but the city recorders, you've got city treasurers, you've got you call it code enforcement officers. We have UCMA, which is well represented here, but Utah Municipal Attorneys Association. But we have some of these affiliate groups out there, and we found ourselves in this last session sometimes in different sides of bills, mostly through lack of either coordination or just lack of maybe hearing about some of the things from some of the groups. So one of the things that we've talked about, and just want to get some quick feedback on, is having each one of those affiliate groups get 1 member in the LPC. So this would be an effort to have them come to LPC, hear the discussions, know what's going on, so we can get that information back to them. And also the hope is if they're at the LPC, they're voting when we take a position on something, hopefully that position would then go back again to those affiliate groups, and we're not in a place where we have any cross discussions or any things where you go to one group that's still representing cities, just a small part of the city that has something different than where you're all at when we take positions. So just want to do a quick gut check on that one. If there's any real concerns, if we offer, again, not to everyone in the affiliate, but probably just whoever the president is of Municipal Attorneys Association, for example, you're an LPC member, come to LPC, you get a vote. and kind of bring you into the fold that way. So just any thoughts, questions, comments on that proposal? We're talking about like 6 or 7 folks here. Not a lot. It really wouldn't swing too much. And the other thought is, I mean, everyone from an affiliate group they're a city employee, so they report to someone in a city. So if there was something where they suddenly start voting a strange way or going somewhere else, someone from the city can say, "Do you understand what's going on here?" Because we kind of had to do that a couple times last year. We had to go to a couple meetings and said, "Do you all understand the implications of this?" And we're able to steer it back the right way. But so yeah, we're not talking about a large group of people, and we don't think it would have a major impact on LPC. But the hope is it would have an impact the other direction of getting some water down at the end of the row. They would get, 1 vote. Not the affiliate group, but like the president. So the same way that like Seth is kind of the designee from UCMA, and we brought that into the board here. Like Municipal Attorneys Association would have a person on LPC, likely the president, but that's kind of the idea.
I think it's a good idea, and I think the affiliate groups, if they just have 1 vote per affiliate group organization, wouldn't dilute what I think is the important voice of the LPC members from our cities. And I do agree. I think of an example 4 years ago on some law enforcement retirement issues where it was very important that we had Tom Ross at the time there from the Chiefs Association to give feedback and updates and insights, and for him to hear full budget constraints to share as well. So I think it makes sense. I think it would be important that we ensure that the person who we're inviting to attend and vote and speak be probably someone in their leadership structure, not just like a city engineer who may not be engaged in their discussions showing up to say, "I speak for all city engineers."
Yeah, that's a good one. Any other thoughts on this one? And again, we'll bring back a more specific proposal, but before we start drafting, just want to get some initial gut checks. The second one, and we've talked about this one before, but want to get thoughts about changing some of our bill positions. So the way it is right now, we have 5 bill positions. We have support, oppose, neutral, position pending, and if you look at our bill tracker, there's a whole bunch of those, and then no position. Then we also have modifiers to those where we say this is, this bill is a hot bill, this is a bill that we're working. And what we found is there gets to be some confusion from people who pull up the bill tracker between what some of those things mean. So we would like to kind of simplify and clarify what that looks like. And so I'll tell you kind of what we're thinking, and then I have a question about some more of that. But the first one is, if we change some of them, so right now we use neutral on things that we're truly neutral on. But we use no position, for example, when we are not quite sure where we're at yet. We're negotiating on a lot of things. But as you know, because we're negotiating until like day 45, there's a whole lot of no positions that are sitting on there. And that doesn't necessarily tell people what we're doing or why we don't have a position. So one of the proposals would be to take what we currently have on some of the modifiers and say like either work could be a position. So right now our position on this bill is to work it. Another one would be on some of these where we just have no position is we really don't care about this bill. We need to know about it for situational awareness. It needs to be on the tracker, but it would just be a position of watch or monitor, something to that effect. So we would have then support, oppose, monitor, work, and then we could still have a no position if necessary. But position pending really wouldn't be an issue. We just say we're working in this thing until we get to something. So that's sort of the original layout. The second part to that is we have talked about, do we need something that is like a strongly oppose or a strongly support for those bills that we really motion to hate kind of things. We could have a position of hate. But no, so the question is on this one, and I'm not being facetious on this. I am truly curious. Would it be helpful as you're talking to legislators to say we truly have a position either strongly oppose or strongly support on a bill. Is that a worthwhile position, or is that too far of a modification when we're talking about positions? Would love to get your thoughts on any and all of that.
Putting on my day job.
As
hat.
a potential, sorry.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know what that is. But day job hat, clients will often have high and low on a pose. That is really common, and I think it does matter. And so I think figuring out something in that realm. I think a monitor is important, because I agree that the league tracking list gets a little weird with towards the end of the session with the giant list of position pending. If it's really just we need to know because it will require that at some point clerks or engineers or someone know that this bill passed, but we don't have an opinion one way or the other, moving it to a monitor, it does make a lot of sense. I think working is FYI a weird position. I think you should either move it into like a low oppose or a high oppose.
Right. Yeah, and that's really the what we're trying to thread there is on the neutrals and the no positions. A lot of times those are things that we're working. We're not sure if we're opposed to it yet. We're not sure if we're support. So we're trying to figure out a way to communicate to people. We're not neutral on this one. We do have a position. We have thoughts.
Can you
We're just not
just,
quite sure what's going to land yet.
can you just say negotiation instead of work?
In negotiation.
In negotiation.
We're doing something with it, yeah. Okay, that's a good point. So, but you do think something like a high oppose, low oppose is useful. Other thoughts? I see some head shakes on that.
The term negotiating is helpful to me because we're still teetering on which way we're going to go.
Will high oppose come with any specific emojis that we might be able to?
We have often joked about putting emojis on the tracker, but probably not.
A question for Kate, in your experience with the highs and the lows. It feels like having a low oppose and a high oppose can weaken the low oppose.
It
And
can.
maybe then the high oppose becomes the standard because the low oppose is weak. And so I'm wondering if a low oppose and a high oppose is better, or if there's just an oppose and then a rarely used but available, strenuously object or hate, something else.
Motion to hate. Often a high and a low is a good instruction to the team working on the issue. A high support or oppose usually means you are using all of the resources available to you. So you're going to be testifying, working the hallway, activating your league army, talking to the media. You're using everything you can throw at it one way or the other. Low often means you may be choosing to engage in a different way, because you're making some progress, but you want to make it clear we are not happy. So you may testify against the bill, but you're not openly working the hallway. You may give a no comment to the media if they call and ask for questions because you want to preserve relationships. So sometimes that high and low is it really about how you're deploying your resources.
Follow-up comment. In my opinion, we wouldn't do something like a high oppose unless we've reached, action alert level. If we're not going to email everyone and say, call your legislator right now, we haven't got high oppose level. So I do agree that would be something you would want to use judiciously. I think we had.
Yes. So first we had Mayor Monson with his hand up, and then a number of comments that I can run through when Mayor Monson is done.
I was going to say, as a potential legislator here, I guess that it would probably be more helpful to me and and then maybe how it's
Mayor Monson, you're breaking up. We
A little
can't.
bit more on.
Sorry, Mayor Monson, we
I'll
caught about
text
every other
you.
word there.
I have that stuff.
Yeah, Mayor Monson, can you type in the comment? Sorry, we were only catching like every other word that you had. But Nick, yeah, what other comments do we have?
Let's see. First, going back on LPC affiliate members, Mayor Tran mentioned if we open LPC voting to other organizations, we should consider charging them for a membership. Do the other organizations already pay dues? A good thought. Quick answer to that is currently none of our affiliate organizations, including the clerks and the managers, pay dues as an organization. They do through their cities and towns. That is a good point. Mayor Randall mentioned I'd like to have other options in our tracking system, going back to what we're talking about now. And then I saw another one and now it has disappeared. Mayor Tran had a couple of recommendations for our tracking, but that has maybe she removed that. That has disappeared.
No,
from-
I did. I was just thinking, for me, just to be, to look at it really fast, it's good to just know high, low, kill it, so that it's not moderately hate it, kind of hate it. It just helps me to know, okay, we really don't like this, or we're okay with it. I don't know, just something simple helps me, but.
Sometimes when we say we oppose it or we like it or whatever, we're not still negotiating. If there could be a link that just has our top 3 talking points, because then we could push on it and say, this is why. Because sometimes after a long LPC meeting, we remember we oppose it, but we can't always remember the specifics. And so that might be helpful as each of us are speaking with the legislators. These click, this, and this. Talk to Justin.
Perfect.
I
Thank you,
second
don't
that.
worry.
That's fantastic.
Would there be a reason to have a public list and then an internal list that's got some of the strategy and maybe more of that high and low? I understand it's important that the league has their public list, but maybe it only goes to the public list with a more simplified, as Mayor Tran was describing, support, oppose, neutral, once you're past a certain point, but that it be important for internal purposes that you be able to have some of those more nuanced positions that allow you to deploy your staff and your resources in different ways.
So there is, we do have, the internal list has a lot more information than what is external. So externally it has the bill, it has the position, and that's about it. We can look into, I'm not sure if there's a way to link talking points on something that's something we could look at. But particularly for some of the big bills, it makes a lot of sense that says, yeah, if this is a big bill, we need to talk about it. And we put them in the email, but we can look at ways to deploy that. We have granted some city folk access to the internal stuff that has all of our notes and all of our analysis. I'm not saying you shouldn't get access to that, but I don't know that you'll want it. There's a lot in there sometimes. But yes, if someone is interested in that, there is an opportunity to get some access and see all of our notes in there. But yeah, those are good comments. That'll help us. So I think, so with the direction there, I think we will come back with some more solid proposals that can get some more guidance on this. We have bylaws can be changed by the board. We don't need to take that full membership. So we do have a few months that we can negotiate on that. But that's very helpful. That gives us direction, and we'll move forward with that. So thank you.
Thank you. That was a great discussion. Let's move to item number 7, which is our executive director report. And I'll turn the time to Cam.
I'll be quick. We had some of this already, but during the summer, there's a staff league workshop. Half our staff attended that. And then there's the director's workshop I referenced last week. When I arrived at the director's workshop last week, the NLC liaisons came up to me, and the first thing they said to me was how much they appreciated our staff and said that they loved having them at the staff workshop. Our staff were there, all presented, and we really do punch above our weight because we're still one of the smaller leagues in the country, but our staff has really taken on roles in a national way, trying to help other state leagues. And that was the first thing the NLC staff said to me when I arrived. So kudos to the league staff for that. Second, I presented on the local administrative advisor program last week, and folks were blown away. We don't have a year-end report for you yet due to time today, so I won't steal the thunder there, but we've helped over 100 communities in the first year through the local administrative advisor program. And there were several league directors who said they wanted to meet with us to follow up and talk about how the program's working and whether they want to try to implement it in their states. We talked a lot about communication last week, and several leagues were bragging that they do weekly emails during the session and monthly emails, sometimes even 2 times a month in the off season. And I laughed because we're the only league I know of that does a weekly email in the off season and a daily email during the session. So I'm proud of that communication effort, and thank you to Cassidy, who's been doing the thankless task of cleaning up all of our email lists and updating the website to, again, better improve our communication with the membership. We already mentioned the board meeting dates. Because of the legislative calendar, we'll need to split some of those up in the fall. The one thing I'll note about the City Summit, the National League of Cities City Summit, it's in Tampa this November. It'll be in Salt Lake next November. So that'll be exciting. As Mayor Shepherd is running for second vice, I am always at City Summit. If anybody's interested in attending City Summit, let us know. This is NLC's 100th anniversary. So we might have an NLC representative at our conference, but they actually will be doing they're doing a road show, and they would like to interview some board members and do some photos with ULCT board members while they're here at annual. So if you're interested in going to City Summit in Tampa, let us know. Otherwise, watch for NLC because they'll be at our event as part of their 100th anniversary. So with that, Mayor Kaufusi, thank you for hosting, and thank you for everybody for being here. I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up.
Great. Before we wrap a few things up, I just have a few little items. First, I want to congratulate Mayor Monson on winning his primary. That's exciting. Congratulations. Hopefully you're still online and can hear us clapping for you. All right. The next item I want to discuss is the executive board here is doing an evaluation on our ULCT director. So far, the winner is Kate. She has submitted hers, so she's winning. All of you, Mayor Walker, myself, Seth, you're all going to get it resent to you. Probably already did. I had Kay send it again. And so the thought of this is we all love evaluations, good or bad. They're good to have. They're protectors. So my thought is I hate meetings. So what we'll do is after the board meeting at the convention, let's get it, if you're okay, Mayor Walker and Seth and Mayor Silverstrini, if we can just huddle up for about 30 minutes and have yours done and submitted. I'll be able to pull all the stats and we can go through it really quick and then just visit with Cam for a few minutes and check the box on this one. And other than that, just take note of the dates at the bottom that we have posted in red. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. In a second. Okay, all in favor say aye. And the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. And those that travel, drive home safely.